Hello all and welcome back. Thanks for coming back for Zoom 201. Today we're going to be discussing how to use Zoom for hosting meetings. So to start us off, just a quick disclaimer, same as last time. I do not work for Zoom and I'm not speaking on behalf of the company or the brand. I'm just sharing what I have found to be the most effective ways to utilize the Zoom software. Now that that's out of the way, let's get rolling. At this point, you should already have a Zoom account and you've probably attended a meeting or two, or at least gotten to play around with some of the features. We're gonna jump right into creating a meeting on the Zoom website, on the computer platform, and on the app. Then we'll go over the Zoom features within the platform that will help you with hosting, and finally, we'll go over some safety and security tips. I find the easiest way to schedule meetings is in the downloaded Zoom platform or on the app. But in case you're having trouble accessing those, I'm going to start by going over on the Zoom website. So when you sign into zoom.us, you're going to see this screen. And to schedule a meeting, you're going to press schedule a new meeting. On this screen, you're then going to put in the topic of your meeting, a description, which is optional, when your meeting is going to start, the duration of your meeting. Don't worry if you don't exactly know, they don't kick you off if you go over. But this is a good point to point out that if you have a basic membership, you are limited to 40 minutes for your Zoom meeting. If you upgrade to a pro membership, which we'll show right here, then you have unlimited time hosting your meeting. Actually, the limit is 24 hours, but it's pretty rare that you're going to hit a 24-hour meeting. So do keep that in mind that if you have a basic account, your hosting limit is 40 minutes. And then you're going to set up your time zone to be sure that it's showing up correctly in people's calendars. So I'm in the Eastern time zone. This checkbox here where it says recurring meeting, if this is something that's going to be happening, say, every Wednesday or every Friday, you can check this box and it'll automatically give you options to set it up as a recurrence. Very similar to setting up a recurring series in your calendar. It does give you the option to require registration. I don't typically use this. It just gets tricky. Under meeting ID, you are assigned a personal meeting ID with your membership. At this time, I don't recommend using your personal meeting ID just for security reasons. You don't want anybody to have that in the long run. I will update mine and change it when I'm done with this. So it's not going to stay the same, guys. Don't try and steal it. Not that you would. I use the generate automatically option. You're going to want to require a meeting password. This comes down to security, which we'll come back to later. Zoom automatically generates a meeting password. You can use that number generated, or you can make it whatever you want to make it. Under video, when you join the meeting, this will dictate whether your video is on or off. I prefer to leave it as off, and I turn it on once I'm in the meeting. Under audio, so at this point, you can choose whether to let your participants use telephone, which they can dial into the audio for the conference, or computer audio, or you can leave it that they get to choose. At this time, I know Zoom is limiting telephone options, so computer audio is your best bet, but it doesn't hurt anything to leave it as both. Under your meeting options, this comes into play mostly of security. So you're not going to want to check the box that enables a join before host. You want to be the first one in there as the host, and then you're going to want to enable a waiting room so you're approving people to join your meeting. That way you keep out anyone that's not supposed to be there. Only authenticated users can join. Can sometimes get a little tricky, especially people that aren't familiar with Zoom. So I typically do not check that box. You can check the box that records the meeting automatically, so you don't have to remember to press record. In alternative hosts, this is where you would type in an email of someone that's going to be hosting with you and you want to have the same permissions that you have in the meeting. So once you've worked through these options, you're going to press save, and then you're going to be brought to this page. This is your management page for the meeting. So on this page, you can add it to your calendar. It will give you the meeting ID that you can share with participants if they choose to enter by entering the ID. If they enter using the ID, they will then have to put in the required meeting password. This will also give you the URL invitation. This is the invitation I would recommend sharing with people that will be participating in your Zoom event. So when they click this link, it'll automatically launch Zoom for them, and it will input the password for them. And it's also going to show you these options. To schedule a meeting on the computer platform is super simple. Once you've signed in and you're at your dashboard, you're just going to press this button right here that says schedule. And it's going to bring up this dialog box right here where you put in the name of the meeting under topic. And then a little differently from the web platform, you're going to fill in the times the meeting is going to run from. So you're going to put in the start time and the end time. But don't worry too much about the end time because they're not going to kick you off if you go over, unless you're on a basic account and you go over 40 minutes. Again, there's the recurring meeting option. Generate a meeting ID automatically rather than using your personal meeting ID. Your password generation and requiring a meeting password. Your video options. Your audio options. Again, it doesn't hurt to have both turned on. I recommend computer audio over dialing in. Calendar options to save it to your own calendar, and then by pressing advanced options, you're going to see other things like enabling a waiting room. I don't recommend enabling join before hosts, and you can mute participants on entry. You can also add your alternative hosts here, and you're automatically record a meeting. And then you're just going to press schedule. And the last way for you to schedule your meeting is going to be on a tablet or phone. Again, I recommend using a computer for this or a tablet. It's going to be a little tricky on your phone just because you're not going to be able to see as many videos. But we're going to go through this on a tablet just because it's a little easier to see. So you're going to open up your Zoom app on your tablet, and you're going to press schedule. And just like the other platforms, you're going to enter your topic, the time for it to start, the duration, your time zone, whether or not it's going to be repeating. The using personal meeting ID is going to look a little different. It's going to be a toggle button here. If it's not toggled on, then you're not using your personal meeting ID. It will be automatically generating an ID. Your required meeting password. Again, you can change this to anything you want. It doesn't have to be their generated numbers. And here our host video and participant video looks a little different. Again, it's the toggle button. So when it's turned green and it's toggled on, host video will be on when you sign in. Same thing with participant video. Your audio options open up a little bit differently. Same as before, you can leave both on. You're going to want to leave your waiting room on, which is automatic now in Zoom. And then your advanced options for allowing join before host and automatically record and entering alternative hosts. And once you're done, you just press done. And it will give you the option to add it to your calendar. So now we've scheduled our meeting and we're ready to get everyone in the same room. I'm going to go through some of the useful features in the Zoom room. Most of these features carry over to the app versions, though if you're going to be hosting, I do recommend using a computer or a tablet. Just for the ease of use, you can see more videos on a tablet than you can on a phone, even though the apps are very similar. Some features like screen sharing can be tricky on an app, while things like whiteboard are a little easier to use in the app. Especially if you're going to be drawing diagrams, the whiteboard's really nice to use in the app. You can think about these factors when you're deciding which platforms are going to be best for the type of meeting you're hosting. So we're going to start at the very beginning with some security options. This is new from Zoom to have this button right here. So if you haven't updated your computer platform, you're going to want to do that because it makes it super easy to get to. So under security, you can lock your meeting, which will make it so that nobody else can join the meeting once you have everybody you're going to have in there. You can enable your waiting room. If you didn't already do that in your meeting setup, you can also turn your waiting room off, but again, I don't recommend that. You can also allow your participants to share screen, chat, or rename themselves. In this situation, when you're hosting, I would not have share screen turned on for participants, and I'll go over that a little later when we discuss some security things. So I'm just going to turn that off. It's now unchecked. When you press on participants, it's going to bring up the participants panel. So this is going to come into play with your waiting room. As people are joining, I recommend having this panel open because their names are going to pop up on the list over here. And on this list, you can let them join. You can press join. You'll also get a little pop-up up here if they're in the waiting room that will let you put them into the meeting. But if you have a bunch of people coming in all at once, it's a whole lot simpler to do it on this panel and just let them in. On this panel, you can also mute and turn off video for individual participants. You can do that by pressing the microphone that you can see moving right there, or by pressing the video to turn off video. You can also unmute participants, but you cannot turn their cameras on. You can press the camera button and request that they turn their camera on, but you can't turn it on for them. Down at the bottom here, you can mute all of the participants all at once by pressing mute all, or unmute all of the participants all at once by pressing unmute all. Under more, you can mute participants automatically when they come in. You can allow participants to unmute themselves. So if you uncheck this box, once you have muted a participant, they will not be able to unmute themselves. I would leave this box checked if you're going to be having conversation. I would uncheck it so that people can't unmute themselves if you're giving a lecture and you don't want interruptions. I recommend leaving the enter and exit chime turned off. It gets really annoying really fast to have a noise every time someone signs in or closes out the window. You can allow participants to rename themselves. And again, you have the lock meeting and enable a waiting room. If you have people that are raising their hands on the reactions, you can make that all go away with this button right here. So moving across the bottom of the screen, you have the chat. This is a great spot to drop links or files in so that all of your participants can get them. Just keep in mind that when you drop a file, a link, or a message in here, that you can only see it if you are already in the meeting when it's sent. So people that have joined the meeting after you sent it, they're not going to be able to see it. So make sure that everybody that you want in the meeting is there when you send the file. We're going to swing back to share screen in just a minute. Right here, you'll normally see a little red circle or a little white circle that says recording. On that button, you just press the button and it's going to start recording. It gives you an option of saving the recording to your computer or to the cloud. This is another difference between Basic and Pro. The Pro account gives you 1 GB of cloud storage for your recordings, whereas Basic, you can only save to your computer. I opt to save to my computer even though I have a Pro account, and then I upload it to my iCloud Drive to save space on my computer. That is personal preference and based on what type of account you have. So moving across this bottom bar here, we're going to press the share screen button. This is a pretty awesome feature for hosting, and share screen is going to allow you to share a window on your whole desktop with your group that's in your meeting. That's an easy way to show them what you're talking about on a website, run a slideshow, or even bring up a whiteboard to draw diagrams. So when you press the share screen button, you will be given the option of sharing your whole desktop, which I have 2 desktops running here. I have 2 monitors. If you're going to be using multiple programs, this is going to be what you're going to want to use. If you're going to be switching between windows, that kind of thing. It will also give you the option to share an individual application you have open. So in this case, I have Google Chrome open and I have Microsoft Word open. This means that it will only show that screen. You can also share what's happening on your phone if you want to show how to use an app using AirPlay if it's an iPhone, or you can use a cable. I know this is available on Mac setups. I don't know if it will work on an Windows setup. Be sure if you're going to be sharing a video with sound or anything that's going to have sound, you've checked share computer sound. Otherwise, you're not going to get any sound passed through to your participants. And if for whatever reason you need to share a video, I recommend checking this to help it come through a little clearer. Just keep in mind that it can be clunky when you're sharing a video through screen share. Sometimes you're better off dropping the link over in the chat box here. So under some advanced options, you can share just a portion of your screen or just the sound from your computer, like if you want to share a song. So I'm gonna open up the whiteboard here because I had mentioned that a couple times that the whiteboard is really useful for sharing diagrams. You can also type in notes. I'm just gonna draw a little something here. There is a spotlight feature that looks like a little red pointer. You can erase sections, you can write things in. It's a whiteboard. You can then save your work at the end so you don't lose your whiteboard. So again, if you're gonna be drawing out a ring and you wanna diagram things, there's lots of things you can do there. And then I'm gonna actually share my second desktop here and show you one other feature, which is called Annotate. So this is sharing my whole desktop. And if I wanted to annotate this screen as I'm sharing with it, I can do it just like I did in the whiteboard. I can write things in, I can make a text box there, or I can draw and maybe circle something I really want to point out here. And that blue didn't show up, so I'm going to do it in red and draw that in again. So I'm pointing that out there to you, and maybe I want to show you some education initiatives. So I'm going to go back to my mouse and drop down that menu, and I can move on over here, and I don't really want that anymore, so I can clear that all away. And then when you're done sharing your screen, you're going to just press stop share. So sharing on an iPad or a tablet or your phone is going to be a little bit different. Sharing capabilities are a little bit more limited. So when you press your share menu up in the top right corner there, you have the ability to share your screen, but it has to be done as a screen recording. You can share content from photos or your drive, and you can share websites by typing in the website URL. So while you can share on the iPad or a tablet, the easiest thing to share on the tablet is going to be Whiteboard because you have the ability to draw. And your whiteboard on your tablet's going to look like this with your controls down at the bottom. And those controls are very similar to before. You're automatically going to be on a pen. You can press the little arrow button there to show some more options. And then in the bottom right corner, those 3 dots are going to let you save your whiteboard to photos and to start up a new clean whiteboard. So in our last video, we went over a whole bunch of our preferences for Zoom. And I'm going to open those preferences back up again and just go through a few that are applicable to hosting. So under General, you have a couple options here that are useful, one of which is being Show My Meeting Duration, which is going to pull up this clock in the corner here that lets you know how long your meeting's been going for. This really comes in handy if you're on a time crunch for your meeting. Under our chat menu, scrolling down to the bottom, you can set up notifications for keywords. So the reasoning for doing this is if you're running a meeting and you're discussing things, you don't really have the ability to watch your chat and run your meeting and share a screen all at the same time. So you can set up before your meeting a notification for certain keywords, such as the word question, or if you're specifically instructing on something like piaffe or passage, you can have it notify you if that word pops up in a chat. So now you're ready to host some meetings. I'm going to go over a few key security points. Because you are online, there's always the risk of hackers, and in the current environment, they've definitely increased. But by using these features I'm going to show you, you should be good to go with preventing that. Number one, you should always utilize a password. If you've provided the direct link to the meeting, attendees won't have to put in that password. It only really comes into play if you're typing in the meeting ID. So it's a safe bet to put in that password when you're creating your meeting. When you publish your meeting link or password on your social media or website, you've completely canceled out your precaution you've made by making all the information needed to join public. While a waiting room does help mitigate this, and I know the easiest way to get the info out is through social media, consider emailing the information instead or sending it in a private message. It's just a little bit safer. Always use a waiting room for your Zoom meetings, even if it's going to be a bunch of people and you have to press join a million times. This ensures that you have control over who is coming into your meeting. It will also allow you to kick people back out of the meeting into the waiting room should it come to a point that you need to. If it's a collaborative meeting in a small group, this next one doesn't really apply, but if it's a big group get together, I recommend limiting screen sharing to just the host. This protects you if all of your other barriers fail and someone that isn't supposed to be there ends up in your room. They can't share inappropriate content onto every participant's screen if sharing is limited to just the host. You can change screen sharing to allow participants temporarily. So you just click that little arrow button next to screen share, allow participants. Whoever needs to share their screen gets it done, and then you can put it back to just the host. And then the last one is fairly common sense, but before turning on your audio or video, consider what will be seen and heard from your camera. Ensure your background is what you want it to be, and there is no unwanted background noise or conversations. The same applies to your screen if you're going to be sharing it. Make sure any browsers or documents you don't want seen by the general public are closed out of. So with those precautions in mind, you are all set to have some really fun Zoom meetings. And this wraps up Zoom 201. So thank you all for tuning in. If you have any questions or you would like help with any of these Zoom features, feel free to reach out to me by email, by phone, or on Facebook.